Every year, Americans spend over $4 billion on collagen supplements, powders, capsules, flavored drinks, gummies shaped like little bears. And yet the people who made those products know something most buyers don't. The collagen in those bottles has already been broken apart, hydrolyzed, fragmented, processed at temperatures high enough to denature its original structure. What arrives in that tub is not what your grandmother would have recognized as food. It's what remains after the food has been taken apart and reassembled into something easier to ship, easier to market, and considerably easier to sell. Here's what the marketing doesn't mention. Every civilization that preceded us, the ancient Hebrews, the physicians of Egypt, the herbalists of China, the cooks of Rome got their collagen from food, from bones, from cartilage, from connective tissue simmered low and slow until the marrow surrendered its minerals and the gelatin flowed like liquid silk. They didn't call it collagen. They didn't need to. They called it strength. They called it healing. They called it the pot that never went cold. Today we're breaking down 13 natural collagen foods drawn from ancient texts, traditional kitchens, and modern nutritional research that delivers something no powder can replicate: collagen in its complete food matrix form, with every cofactor, every mineral, every synergistic amino acid still intact. Pay attention to number 1 on this list. Most people walk past it every week without a second glance. It doesn't come in a jar. It doesn't have a label. And it may be the single most concentrated source of type 1 collagen available in any ordinary market. And stay with us through number 7, because that entry carries a story from the oldest recorded medical text in human history, a story about 3 days in the wilderness, a body on the edge of collapse, and a preparation so precise, so physiologically deliberate, that modern researchers are only now beginning to understand. Number 13. Bone broth. Before there were kitchens, there were fires, and over those fires, in clay pots and stone vessels, people learned something that no one taught them: that bones, simmered long enough in water with something acidic, gave back more than flavor. They gave back strength. In Exodus, the bones of Joseph were carried out of Egypt by Moses, treated as sacred, preserved across 400 years of captivity. The Talmud records detailed instructions for the preparation of marrow bones, including the timing and vessel requirements for Shabbat cooking. Bones were not waste in the ancient world. They were treasure. Chinese medicine texts dating to the Han Dynasty, around 200 BCE, reference bone decoctions as a treatment for kidney deficiency, the term used for what we now recognize as bone density loss, joint degeneration, and connective tissue weakness. Ayurvedic texts from the same era prescribed bone soups as a recovery food after illness, injury, and childbirth. The Roman army carried portable dried bone concentrate with them on campaigns, in early form of what we now call bone broth powder, though made from the real thing. Modern research has identified why these traditions converged. Slow-simmered bone broth is rich in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, the 3 amino acids that form the helical backbone of collagen protein. It contains type 1 and type 2 collagen fragments, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium in ratios that closely mirror the mineral composition of human bone. A 2017 study in the International Journal of Sport Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism found that athletes who consumed gelatin-rich foods before activity showed a 50% increase in collagen synthesis markers compared to a control group. The key was the food matrix, the minerals and amino acids arriving together, the way your body evolved to receive them. The preparation detail that separates medicinal broth from mere stock is temperature and time. Never boil. A full rolling boil emulsifies the fat into the liquid, creates a cloudy, bitter result, and actually degrades some of the peptides you're trying to extract. Your pot should show only the gentlest tremor at the surface, what French chefs call a frémissement, and it should hold that temperature for a minimum of 12 hours for poultry bones, 24 to 48 hours for beef or lamb. Before the long simmer begins, blanch the bones first. Cover with cold water. Bring to a boil. Drain, and discard that first water. This removes the impurities that cause off flavors. Then add 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar per gallon of fresh water. The acid, not enough to taste. Just enough to act, draws calcium and magnesium from the bone matrix. Your finished broth, when chilled overnight, should set into a firm, wobbling jelly. That jiggle is your proof. A pot of bone broth is not a supplement strategy. It's the oldest form of structural nourishment we know. Number 12. Beef tendon. The ancient Hebrews had a prohibition still observed by some Jewish communities today against eating the gid hanashe, the sciatic nerve that runs through the hindquarters of an animal. The prohibition comes from Genesis 32, from Jacob's wrestling match with the angel, after which he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. The surrounding connective tissue, the tendons, was considered deeply significant. It marked the body's structural integrity, the thing that held a man together. In traditional Chinese medicine, beef tendon has been consumed for over 2,000 years as a food specifically associated with building jin, the sinews. The connective tissue, the flexible strength that holds the skeleton in relationship to itself. Korean cuisine has oxtail and tendon soup, gomguk, prepared at low heat for 12 or more hours. Vietnamese pho, at its best, includes gan, tendon, simmered until it reaches a gelatinous transparency. These are not separate discoveries. They are the same discovery made independently across thousands of miles. Beef tendon is composed of approximately 95% protein, and the majority of that protein is type 1 collagen, the same structural protein that forms the scaffold of your skin, the surface layer of your joints, the casing of your blood vessels, and the lattice of your gut lining. It naturally contains glycine and proline in high concentrations, along with glucosamine, a compound so associated with joint supplement sales that its food source origins have been largely forgotten. A 3-ounce serving delivers approximately 32 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 0 carbohydrates. It is, gram for gram, one of the most protein-dense foods in existence. The key to preparing beef tendon is patience and a 2-stage process. First, blanch. Cover raw tendons with cold water. Bring to a boil for 10 to 15 minutes. Drain, and discard the water. This removes the metallic, gamey compounds that make unfamiliar cuts unappealing. Then, cook long. Pressure cooker 90 minutes on high pressure. Slow cooker 8 to 10 hours on low. Stovetop 4 to 6 hours at the gentlest simmer. The transformation is remarkable. A piece of tissue so tough a knife barely scores it becomes something yielding, gelatinous, and deeply satisfying. Chill overnight before slicing. And the gelatin that sets in the cooking liquid, keep it. That is concentrated collagen broth, denser than almost anything you can buy. Find beef tendon at Asian grocery stores, Latin markets, or any butcher willing to go past the standard case. Ask. They almost always have it. Number 11. Chicken feet. They appear in Proverbs, not explicitly, but the imagery of the foot, the network of joints and sinews. The body-bearing weight runs throughout wisdom literature as a metaphor for endurance and structural integrity. The ancient Egyptians consumed the feet of fowl in medicinal preparations described in the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts ever recovered. Dated to approximately 1550 BCE, it describes preparations for strengthening the limbs using animal extremities. In China, phoenix claws, feng jiao, are a celebrated dim sum preparation, braised in black bean sauce until the small bones nearly dissolve. In Puerto Rico and across the Caribbean, chicken feet enrich the caldo that anchors Sunday soup. In South Africa, walkie-talkies, grilled feet, and heads are sold as street food at every major outdoor market. 4 continents. 1 ingredient. The same intuition about where the nourishment lives. Chicken feet are almost entirely skin, cartilage, and connective tissue, which is exactly where type 2 collagen concentrates. Type 2 collagen is structurally distinct from type 1. It forms the matrix of articular cartilage, the cushioning tissue inside your joints. Research published in the journal Osteoarthritis and Cartilage found that type 2 collagen supplementation derived from chicken cartilage significantly reduced joint pain and stiffness scores in patients with knee osteoarthritis over a 12-week period. Chicken feet also naturally contain chondroitin sulfate, a compound commonly sold alongside glucosamine in joint supplements, along with calcium and phosphorus, in a form your body handles more gently than isolated minerals. Preparation begins with a thorough rinse and the removal of the claw tips. Just snip them off with kitchen shears at the last joint. Then deodorize. Place the cleaned feet in water with a few slices of fresh ginger or a splash of rice vinegar. Bring to a boil. Cook 5 minutes. Drain and rinse. This step is not optional. It removes the compounds that give unfamiliar cuts their unfamiliar smell. Then braise. 30 minutes in a pressure cooker or 90 minutes in a covered pot at a gentle simmer. The skin will become silky. The small bones will soften, and the liquid will thicken. Add a handful of chicken feet to any broth or soup. They'll dissolve into the background while transforming the texture into something noticeably richer. You may not see them. You will feel the difference. Number 10. Wild-caught salmon skin. In the Torah, fish with fins and scales are explicitly permitted, and describe the emphasis on scales turns out to have nutritional significance that no ancient commentator could have known. Because the scales and skin of certain fish, salmon in particular, are among the densest sources of marine collagen available anywhere in nature. The Ainu people of northern Japan, among the oldest continuously living cultures on Earth, traditionally consumed salmon in its entirety, including the skin, dried or lightly cooked, as a winter preservation food. Norse sagas describe fishermen's wives rendering fat from salmon skin during the long winter months, not for flavor, but for what they called its strengthening quality. Korean and Japanese cuisine have elevated salmon skin to something intentional: crispy salmon skin rolls. Grilled kawa, skin-on preparations that Western food culture largely discards. Marine collagen from fish skin is primarily type 1 collagen, with a molecular weight and peptide structure that some researchers believe may be absorbed more efficiently than bovine collagen. A 2019 study in the journal Nutrients found that marine collagen hydrolysate improved skin hydration and elasticity scores in women over 45 after just 8 weeks of supplementation. What the study used was a supplement derived from fish skin, but the food itself, salmon skin prepared properly, delivers the same proteins in their intact form. The skin also contains omega-3 fatty acids, astaxanthin, the carotenoid that gives salmon its pink color and functions as a potent antioxidant, and fat-soluble vitamins that work synergistically with collagen synthesis. Don't remove the skin before cooking. Cook salmon skin side down in a dry pan over medium-high heat for 3 to 4 minutes until the skin crisps and releases cleanly. The skin should be golden and crisp, not soft or soggy. Eat it. If you're making broth, add the skin to the pot. If you're grilling, leave the skin intact to protect the flesh and then consume it. 1 fillet of wild-caught salmon with skin intact provides roughly 3 to 4 grams of marine collagen protein, not a supplement dose, but a food dose, delivered with every cofactor the original animal contained. Number 9. Egg whites and the membrane within. Eggs appear in Jewish dietary law, Greek mythology, Roman agricultural writing, Chinese cosmology, and Ayurvedic medicine as symbols of completeness. The Egyptian creation myth places a cosmic egg at the origin of existence. The practical reality is somewhat less cosmic, but perhaps more useful. Eggs are one of the most complete collagen-supporting foods available. What most people don't know, and this is genuinely underappreciated even among nutritionists, is that the thin membrane between the egg white and the shell is one of the richest natural sources of type 1, type 5, and type 10 collagen found in any food. That papery film, typically discarded, contains hyaluronic acid, chondroitin sulfate, and glucosamine in concentrations high enough that eggshell membrane extract has become its own supplement category. A 2009 clinical trial published in Clinical Interventions in Aging found that supplementation with egg membrane reduced joint pain by 33% and improved joint flexibility by 25% after 60 days. The supplement is made from what most people peel away and throw out. Egg whites themselves are rich in proline, one of the two amino acids your body cannot make in sufficient quantities to sustain collagen production as you age. Eating egg whites supports the raw material supply chain for your body's own collagen synthesis. But they need to be cooked. Raw egg whites contain avidin, a compound that blocks the absorption of biotin, a B vitamin, critical to collagen formation. Cooked egg whites contain no such interference. Prepare eggs gently, soft-boiled, poached, or slow scrambled at low heat preserves the amino acid profile better than high-temperature methods. Pair eggs with vitamin C-rich foods, peppers, tomatoes, citrus, because vitamin C is the enzymatic cofactor required for the hydroxylation of proline into hydroxyproline, the step that actually builds collagen structure. The egg provides the raw material. The vitamin C provides the catalyst. Together, they accomplish what neither achieves as efficiently alone. Number 8. Pork trotters. Pig's feet appear in the celebratory food traditions of cultures that had no contact with one another. American Southern cuisine, German Eisbein, Filipino crispy pata, Chinese zhujiao, Argentinian matambre all center the braised or roasted foot of the pig as a feast food, a restoration food, a meal prepared when the occasion demanded nourishment above ordinary meals. The Hebrew Bible prohibits pork for observant Jews, and the Quran similarly prohibits it for Muslims, but the culinary traditions of the cultures that did consume it converged with remarkable unanimity on one specific part of the animal. Not the loin, not the chop, the foot, the trotters, the part composed almost entirely of skin, cartilage, and connective tissue. The part that, when braised, long and slow, releases the highest concentration of collagen gelatin of any part of the pig's body. Pork skin is exceptionally rich in type 1 and type 3 collagen, type 3 being the form most associated with vascular elasticity, skin suppleness, and the structural integrity of the gut wall. Gelateria in Rome used to sell jellied pig's foot preparations, not as novelty, but as medicine restorative preparations given to the ill, the elderly, and women recovering from childbirth. The gelatin was the point. Preparation requires an initial blanch cover with cold water. Bring to a boil for 15 minutes. Drain. Rinse. Then braise low and long 3 hours in a covered pot with aromatics, or 90 minutes in a pressure cooker. The liquid that remains after cooking should set firmly when chilled. A properly made pork trotter braise produces a natural gelatin richer than almost any commercially available supplement. Season the cooking liquid with salt and a splash of rice vinegar after cooking to balance the richness, and consume both the meat and the gel that surrounds it. Number 7. Bone marrow. Set the scene. The year is approximately 700 BCE. The prophet Elijah has just experienced the greatest spiritual confrontation of his life, calling fire down from heaven on Mount Carmel, defeating 450 priests of Baal, then fleeing for his life through desert wilderness. He runs until he cannot run anymore. He lies down under a juniper tree, in the words of 1 Kings, and asks to die. It is enough, he says. 3 days without meaningful food, the body beginning to collapse inward. Then, in 1 Kings chapter 19, an angel touches him twice and says, "Arise and eat. The journey is too great for you." And what was prepared? A cake of bread baked on hot stones, and a cruse of water. That's the surface reading. But here is what scholars and food historians have noted. The Hebrew word translated as cake uga refers specifically to a flatbread made with rendered fat, often bone marrow fat, baked directly on heated stones. This was not an ordinary provision. This was the most calorie-dense, rapidly bioavailable preparation available to a desert traveler, a food deliberately chosen for its capacity to restore a body in acute crisis. That isn't just poetry. That is a description of metabolic restoration. Bone marrow is one of the most nutrient-dense foods in human existence. It contains alkyl glycerols compounds that research has linked to immune modulation and are found in high concentrations in breast milk and shark liver oil. It provides monounsaturated fats that support cell membrane integrity and reduce inflammatory signaling. It contains a compound called adiponectin, which modern research associates with insulin sensitivity and anti-inflammatory activity. And critically, it is rich in type 2 collagen precursors, the amino acids and growth factors that signal the body to rebuild joint cartilage and connective tissue. Pre-agricultural humans appear to have been the first creatures to deliberately crack bones for marrow this behavior. Evidenced in hominid sites over 3 million years old, may represent the original human culinary act. Bone marrow wasn't a delicacy. It was survival. To prepare marrow bones, source femur or knuckle bones cut lengthwise, known as canoe cut, from a butcher or quality market. Season simply with flaky salt and black pepper. Roast at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, 230 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes, just until the marrow softens and begins to bubble at the edges. Do not overcook. The marrow should be creamy and just set, not liquid and running. Scoop directly onto sourdough or eat with a small spoon. Serve with something acidic gremolata, pickled onion, lemon to cut the richness. Consume within minutes of cooking. Marrow continues to cook in residual heat, and overcooked marrow loses both texture and some of its fat-soluble compounds. Elijah ate and walked 40 days on what followed. The tradition of marrow as restorative food is older than any written text. The research is now catching up to what the desert already knew. If this kind of ancient wisdom resonates with you, the kind that doesn't come from a marketing department, the kind that has been quietly sustaining human bodies for thousands of years, hit like and subscribe. Because what's coming next goes even deeper. Number 6. Oxtail. Oxtail appears in no book of scripture by name, but it appears in every culture that ever raised cattle. Jamaican oxtail stew. Braised, low with butter beans, and allspice. Korean gomtang. Simmered for 12 hours until the broth turns white as milk. Italian coda alla vaccinara. The tail of the cow braised with tomato and celery in Rome's working-class Testaccio neighborhood. Chinese luo bai tang, oxtail with turnips. A winter restoration soup. Irish oxtail soup. A staple of the pre-industrial peasant kitchen. These dishes came from necessity. The tail was what remained after the more desirable cuts were taken. And in the act of making something of it, of braising it long and slow until the meat fell off the bone and the cartilaginous joints dissolved into the surrounding liquid, cooks across cultures discovered something the wealthy, eating their lean roasts, didn't understand the deepest nourishment was in the overlooked part. Oxtail is composed of vertebrae, surrounded by a thick band of connective tissue, joint cartilage, and fat-threaded meat. The collagen content is exceptionally high because the tail is a structure in constant movement. Every step an animal takes requires the tail's connective tissue to engage. Movement builds collagen. The most active connective tissues of an animal contain the most structural protein. Oxtail releases type 1 and type 3 collagen during a long braise, along with glycine, arginine, and glutamine, the amino acids most associated with gut lining, integrity, and immune function. Researchers studying the gut microbiome have noted that glycine appears to support the tight junction proteins that prevent intestinal permeability, a condition increasingly linked to systemic inflammation. You are not just feeding your joints when you eat oxtail. You are feeding the barrier between your bloodstream and your gut contents. Brown oxtail pieces in batches don't crowd the pan until deeply caramelized on each surface. This Maillard browning produces flavor compounds that survive the long braise. Then cover with stock or water. Add aromatics. And cook at the lowest possible simmer for a minimum of 3 hours on the stove, or 2 hours in a pressure cooker. The meat should release from the bone without effort. The liquid should be thick, gelatinous, almost syrupy when cooled. That is the measure of a proper oxtail braise. Number 5. Sardines with bones. Sardines appear in the archaeological record of coastal Mediterranean societies dating back 8,000 years. The prophet Jonah, swallowed by a great fish, emerged after 3 days transformed. Whether literal or allegorical, the image of the fish as a vessel of restoration recurs across scripture and across cultures. The ancient Romans operated entire industries around small fish fermentation garum. The fermented fish sauce that seasoned nearly every Roman dish was made largely from sardines and anchovies. In Japan, niboshi, small dried sardines are simmered to make dashi, the foundational broth of Japanese cuisine. In Portugal, tinned sardines are a national treasure, aged and traded like wine. The Phoenicians exported salted sardines across the Mediterranean. One small fish. Every coastal civilization found it and built around it. What makes sardines exceptional in the context of collagen is not that they contain collagen directly, though fish skin does, but that they provide the complete mineral and nutritional infrastructure your body requires to synthesize its own. When you eat a sardine whole, with its bones, you consume calcium in a highly bioavailable form. Phosphorus, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2. These 3 nutrients must arrive together for calcium to be properly incorporated into bone matrix rather than deposited inappropriately in soft tissues. Most supplementation programs separate them. The sardine delivers them simultaneously, in ratios shaped by millions of years of biological evolution. Additionally, sardines are among the richest food sources of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, and DHA compounds that reduce the inflammatory signaling that degrades collagen. Collagen breakdown is not just about insufficient synthesis. It is accelerated by inflammation. You cannot out-supplement chronic inflammation, but you can feed against it. Eat sardines with the bones. The bones of a sardine or canned anchovy are soft enough to eat and provide calcium in a form your body handles more effectively than calcium carbonate supplements. Add sardines to tomato sauce, to grain bowls, to salads, toast bread. Spread with a good mustard, and lay sardines on top with thinly sliced red onion and capers. Squeeze lemon over the top. This is not health food. This is the Mediterranean lunch that preceded the term Mediterranean diet by several thousand years. Number 4. Pig's ears and skin. The dietary restrictions in Leviticus made pork forbidden to the ancient Hebrews. But in examining what those restrictions protected against, primarily the consumption of animals associated with scavenging and parasitic risk in a pre-refrigeration desert climate, we find an interesting inverse truth. The cultures that did consume pork developed, across thousands of years, a detailed understanding of which parts were most nourishing. And the answer was consistently the same: the skin, the ears, the trotters, the head. Mexican chicharron pork skin, fried until it puffs like a cloud, has been made in some form since pre-Columbian times. Filipino sisig, a sizzling preparation of chopped pig face and ears, is considered one of the national dishes. Korean sundae, blood sausage casing made from pork intestine, and pig ear salads dressed with sesame and chili are found at every Pojangmacha street stall. German head cheese and French fromage de tête, cooked pig head, set in its own gelatin, were hospital foods well into the early 20th century, given to surgical patients and the convalescent because physicians of that era understood, empirically, that such preparations accelerated healing. Pork skin contains type 1 and type 3 collagen in concentrations among the highest of any food source. Gram for gram. Pork rinds, the simplest preparation, deliver more collagen protein than most cuts of meat. The problem is preparation. Commercial pork rinds are typically deep-fried at very high temperatures in industrial oils, which degrades the collagen and introduces oxidized fats. Properly made pork skin slow-baked until dry, then finished at high heat to puff, retains the collagen structure. Or braise pork ears in broth with aromatics for 3 hours until completely tender. Then slice thin and dress as a cold salad with rice vinegar, sesame oil, and chili. The cartilage at the center of the ear provides type 2 collagen alongside the skin's type 1. You are eating 2 collagen types in a single preparation. Number 3. Lamb knuckles and neck. Sheep and lamb appear more frequently in biblical text than any other animal. Abel's offering, the Passover lamb, the 23rd Psalm's shepherd metaphor, the sacrificial system of Leviticus. The lamb was the central animal of the ancient Near East, and the people who consumed it ate it entirely. They could not afford to do otherwise. Lamb, neck, and knuckle are among the most collagen-dense cuts of any ruminant animal. The neck is a structure of constant, low-level movement. A grazing animal raises and lowers its head thousands of times daily, and every movement builds connective tissue. Lamb knuckle joints are cased in dense cartilage and surrounded by ligament. These are the cuts a shepherd's family would have braised in a clay pot overnight over banked coals, the ancient equivalent of a slow cooker. In Moroccan cuisine, lamb neck is the foundation of many tagines, braised with preserved lemon, olives, and saffron in an unglazed clay vessel that regulates temperature naturally. Persian pheasantjan simmers, duck or lamb, with pomegranate and walnuts for hours. North African harira soup, eaten to break the fast during Ramadan, is built on lamb neck broth with legumes, tomatoes, and lemon. The collagen released from lamb knuckle and neck during a long braise is type 1 and type 3, with a rich amino acid profile that includes glycine, alanine, and hydroxyproline. Hydroxyproline is the compound researchers actually measure when they want to quantify collagen content in a food sample. Lamb connective tissue is among the hydroxyproline richest foods ever measured. Brown the neck pieces deeply, then braise in a sealed vessel for a minimum of 2.5 hours. The meat should be falling apart. The surrounding liquid should be glossy and thick. Lamb fat has a distinctive character complemented with acid. Pomegranate molasses, tamarind, preserved lemon, or even a splash of red wine vinegar stirred in at the end will lift the entire preparation and make it something memorable. Number 2. Pig's feet jelly and aspic. There is a preparation that appears in the records of almost every pre-industrial European hospital, almshouse, and convalescent home, a set gel made from boiled animal extremities, typically pig's feet, sometimes calves' feet, sometimes a combination, cooled into a trembling jelly, seasoned lightly, served at room temperature to patients recovering from surgery, infection, fever, or the general deterioration of advanced age. French Hôtel Dieu records from the 15th century document the preparation and distribution of gelée de pieds de cochon to the infirm. English hospital cookbooks from the 18th century prescribe calf's foot jelly for convalescents as specifically as physicians prescribed herbs. American Civil War field surgeons documented the preparation of pig's feet broth as a restorative for men too weak to eat solid food. These were not folk remedies running parallel to medicine. They were medicine. What these practitioners understood empirically, and what we are now able to describe biochemically, is that the gelatin released from pig's feet is one of the most concentrated sources of the amino acids that support tissue repair. Glycine alone, found in higher concentrations in pig's feet gelatin than in almost any other food, has been shown in research to support wound healing, reduce inflammatory cytokine production, and assist the liver in processing toxins that accumulate during illness. A 2019 study in Frontiers in Nutrition found that glycine supplementation reduced several markers of metabolic inflammation in human subjects over 12 weeks. Pig's feet provide glycine in quantities that make supplemental doses look modest. To make traditional pig's feet jelly clean and blanch 2 pig's feet as described earlier. Cover with fresh water. Add half an onion, a bay leaf, a few peppercorns, and 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Bring to the gentlest simmer and maintain for 4 to 6 hours. Strain carefully. Season the liquid with fine sea salt and pour into a shallow dish or small ramekins. Chill overnight. The result should be a firm, clear or amber-colored gel dense enough to hold its shape when unmolded. This is the preparation that hospital kitchens made for centuries. It can be eaten as is, served with pickles and mustard, or melted gently and used as a base for soup. Number 1. Beef tendon prepared low and slow. In the book of Genesis, after Jacob wrestles the angel until dawn and walks away limping, the text notes something unusual. The children of Israel were instructed, from that day, not to eat the sinew, the gid, hanashe, the tendon that runs through the hip socket. The prohibition was not a rejection of the tendon. It was a recognition that this specific structure, in this specific location, carried the memory of the most transformative moment in the patriarch's life. The tendon was significant. It was marked. It was remembered. Every major beef-consuming culture has its tendon tradition. Vietnamese pho restaurants display the menu item gan tendon as a premium addition, not a budget one. Japanese gyusuji nikomi is a simmered tendon preparation served in izakayas as a winter comfort food, braised in sake, mirin, and soy for 3 to 4 hours until the pieces become nearly translucent, trembling, silky in the mouth. Korean seoleongtang a milky, long-simmered oxbone and tendon soup has been made in Seoul for over 600 years. The recipe has not changed because it has not needed to. Beef tendon is, by measured analysis, approximately 95% protein, and the overwhelming majority of that protein is type 1, collagen in its most intact, food form state, not hydrolyzed, not fragmented. The complete triple helix structure, which your digestive system breaks down at its own pace, releasing a sustained supply of glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline over several hours, rather than the rapid spike that follows consuming hydrolyzed powder. The sustained release may be why ancestral cultures noted that regular tendon consumption seemed to provide cumulative benefits, the structural integrity of skin and joints appearing to improve with consistent use over months and years. Tendon also contains the highest natural concentration of glucosamine of any commonly consumed food, the same compound found in joint supplements at doses of 1,500 milligrams per day. You are eating the source, not the isolated extraction. The preparation is a 2-stage process, and the second stage is what most people miss. Blanch first cover raw tendons with cold water. Bring to a full boil. Cook 10 to 15 minutes. Drain. Discard all the water. The water will be cloudy, sometimes gray, sometimes foamy. Everything you want is still in the tendon. Everything you don't want is now in the drain. Then the long-cook pressure cooker at high pressure for 90 minutes. Or stovetop at the gentlest simmer for 5 to 7 hours. The tendon is done when it yields completely to gentle pressure, no spring, no resistance, a soft bouncing quality. Refrigerate overnight in some of the cooking liquid. The next day, the gelatin will have set around the tendon pieces, which will be firm and easy to slice cleanly. From here, the applications are as varied as the cultures that developed them, sliced thin and added to pho, braised briefly in a soy, ginger, and star anise sauce, crisped in a hot oven or air fryer until the outer layer caramelizes while the interior remains yielding, added to stews where it will slowly dissolve into the surrounding broth, thickening it with collagen gelatin. The cooking liquid, the broth that remains after preparing the tendon, should never be discarded. Cooled overnight, it will set into the firmest, most concentrated collagen gel you can produce in a home kitchen, more concentrated than broth made from bones alone, more concentrated than any commercially available broth product. Use it as a base for soups. Melt a cube of it into hot water with a pinch of salt for a morning restorative. Freeze it in portions. Jacob walked with a limp for the rest of his life. The story doesn't end with restoration, it ends with a mark, a reminder of the encounter. But the tendon he could not eat. The other tenders of the ancient world turned into medicine. The research is now beginning to ask why they were right. There is one principle that runs beneath every item on this list, and it is the thing most easily lost in the modern food conversation. Processing destroys what time and heat create. A bone broth made at a full rolling boil for 2 hours is not the same as a bone broth barely trembling for 24. A collagen powder made through high-temperature hydrolysis and spray drying is not the same as tendon braised in water with acid at low heat for 7 hours. A canned gelatinized product stabilized with preservatives is not the same as a pig's feet jelly that sets in a ramekin overnight. The compounds that make these foods valuable, the intact triple helix collagen structure, the hydroxyproline, the glycosaminoglycans, the mineral complexes still bound to their protein carriers are sensitive. They are built slowly by the animals that contain them. They survive gentle, long, moist heat. They do not survive industrial processing. They do not survive convenience. Every civilization on this list understood this. The Chinese pharmacists who wrote the Ben Ko texts, the Roman physicians who prescribed their patients calf's foot jelly, the Korean grandmothers who kept the seolyongtang pot going for 12 hours, none of them knew the word collagen. None of them had heard of hydroxyproline or glycosaminoglycans. What they had was observation, accumulated over generations, of what happened to people who ate this way versus people who didn't. The research is now beginning to provide the vocabulary for what they already knew, which leaves a question worth sitting with after this video ends. If the most powerful nutrition available to us is the kind that requires patience, hours of gentle heat, overnight chilling, careful sourcing, intentional preparation, what does it mean that our food culture has optimized almost entirely for speed? What have we lost in that bargain? And what would it look like to begin getting it back? If this video helped you see these foods differently, if it gave you a reason to stop at a butcher counter you've walked past for years, or to let a pot simmer while you sleep, leave a comment below. Tell us which preparation you're going to try first. And if someone in your life is spending money every month on collagen supplements, share this video with them. Not to argue, just to offer them an older answer to a real question. Like and subscribe, because next time, we go even deeper into what the ancient world knew about feeding a body that wants to last. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The information in this video is provided for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or health condition. Consult your physician or qualified health provider before making changes to your diet, especially if you are managing a health condition or taking medications.